The most difficult part about being married to Candace Owens.
Speaking of potential Pusa arranged marriages like the Kirks, at least they dated first. Candace Owens and George Farmer got engaged over FaceTime 17 days after meeting through Pusa.
Well, and get a load of this. The conspiracy theorists are going to love this one.
It was very difficult to describe. Nothing romantic was said, between that day and the day that we got engaged. Nothing romantic was said at all.
Woo! Grace and peace, everybody. You saw the thumbnail. You saw the title. So you know what we're going to do. We're going to get into this fun conversation about George Farmer and Candace Owens. Lots of you all have been asking about her husband. Does her husband support her? What is he saying? He needs to step in and tell her to tamper it down. There's a lot of weirdness about their relationship. It's a strange relationship. Shout out to Prince. But what I want to do is I'm just going to let this play. I'm just going to let this tease out. It's just a couple of quick engagements between her and her husband. And then, of course, Nick Fuentes really decimates them. And then last, I'm going to let George kind of talk for himself. But before we go too far, right here in the corner is the Candyland file. What's the Candyland file, Jason? I'm glad you asked. What I've been doing is grabbing all of the lawsuits related to Candace Owens, and whether it be her and the Macrones, the dismissal filing, the docket from Delaware, the Tyler Robinson case, because of course we want to keep up with that. And of course, Candace has inserted herself into it. So if you want to follow those cases or want to read some of those cases, did you know that she one time sued USA Today? Did you know that? Well, that's in there too. So check it out. As soon as I find more, I will upload them there. So if you hold on to this file, it will hold on to this link. It'll always be updated. And as far as I know, God willing, it'll stay there for you to check out. And we just call it Candyland. Let me know what you think. Maybe I need a better name. Comment down below if you think I should give it a better name. But let's move on. Let's talk about what Nick Fuentes and what happened with all of this going on with Candace. So let's bring this in and let's go.
What is the most difficult part about being married to What is the most difficult part about being married to Candace Owens?
How long have we got? Well, I like to joke with you, and you know that I tell you this joke. So really, this is just for the audience, but I like to joke that there are many different women I'm married to because I'm never quite sure who I'm going to get in one day. So it's like someday I'm going to get one personality, and the next day it's this personality, and then you've got your investigative journalist hat on, and then you've got your mother's hat on, and then you've got your Catholic hat on. So there's a few hats that you're wearing at any one point in time. So it's always fun. I wouldn't say that's difficult. It's really just a joy of who you are as a person.
You're being kind. It's also been a tremendous challenge. And I think personally to you, because you're so different from the environment that you're now stuck into, which is to say,
yeah, that's true.
You are an Englishman. Yeah. You like to retreat, sort of read your texts. A quiet place with a cigar.
Yep, this is all correct.
This is all very correct. Yep. And then you marry this sort of loud American. You don't like taking pictures. You don't like being seen or photographed. And then you marry this loud American. And so you've really had to adjust, I think would be the correct word.
Yeah. It is the meeting of the two cultures is perfected in our marriage, I would say. Yeah. The bombastic Americanism versus the retired English persona has definitely been like fine-tuned.
Who's the most impressive person you've ever met?
My husband, without question. I would say my husband, which is why I married him 18 days after meeting him.
18 days?
18 days after laying eyes, meeting each other. We got engaged, pardon, not married. We got engaged 18 days later because he's the most impressive person.
Speaking of potential Pusa arranged marriages like the Kirks, at least they dated first. Candace Owens and George Farmer got engaged over FaceTime 17 days after meeting through Pusa.
Well, and get a load of this. The conspiracy theorists are going to love this one. Candace Owens meets George Farmer at Turning Point, UK. That's how they met. That's where they met. They didn't meet organically. They didn't meet spontaneously. Candace, who was being paid by Turning Point for Blexit at the time, met George Farmer at a Turning Point, UK party where George Farmer was heavily subsidizing conservative politics around the same time. They meet in a professional context. And 17 days later, he proposes over Zoom. Now, you might say That's a whirlwind romance. Obviously, it's very conspicuous. Who meets somebody and 2 weeks later gets married? Now, some people might say,
okay, I'm going to stop there, and I need to find the clip. Candace tells a story. This is the infamous story where Candace says she took she really felt an inclination that they needed to go to, and she just took Charlie's credit card and she just swiped the card and they booked a trip. Like, there was allegedly no foreknowledge that she would meet George Farmer, anything of that nature. So actually, there's a little bit more conspiracy to add to this conspiracy mix, in that Candace was the one that really wanted to get to UK for the TP UK. And by the way, George Farmer was there, and I believe he actually was funding or sponsoring the lunch and dinner that they were going to, that she was.
Yeah, it's rewind time.
You know, rather relatedly, something that I wanted to tell you yesterday, we had showed you a clip of Charlie discussing our friendship and how he was feeling morally blackmailed over it. And in that same clip, he mentions a very fond memory that I have, that he was there when I met my husband, and he says it's a really fun story. And it is a fun story. It's actually a totally fun, crazy story of how I met my husband, because I had something that came over me, and that's the only way I can describe it. And I get all of the conspiracies online when people were like, there's no way her and her husband got engaged after 18 days. That's exactly how it happened. Okay. I didn't know him. I never even saw his face 18 days prior. And I'm with Charlie. We're hitting the ground running. And I'm just like, I feel compelled that we must go to the UK. It was, when I say, the most overpowering thing ever. I was like, Charlie, we got to go to the UK. We got to go to the UK. We should go to the UK. We should go to London. And he's like, man, why? Why do you want to go to London? I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like we're supposed to be there. I feel like we've got to be there for an event. And I did something that I had never done. I took Charlie Kirk's credit card, and I was like, I'm going to find flights and just book it. And then you just figure out, maybe it means we're supposed to start, Turning Point UK. If there's energy there, that was a part of his vision. He wanted Turning Point to be global, and he had people that were interested in the UK. And so I'm showing you this very old text message chain from that time between me and Charlie, where I never booked flights, looked at flights, but I booked these flights. And I was like, look, the flights are dirt cheap. From NYC to London, $450 in coach, or $1,200 in first class. And he's like, wow, let's book it. All right. And we booked the flights. And then suddenly I realized the reason that I had this overwhelming feeling to be there was because I was supposed to be my husband. And the only thing I can say is that it was an intuition. We describe it, that it had to have been God. We had just had no other reason to be there. And then Charlie set up a speaking event with some people that had been interested. And sure enough, we were there to help Turning Point UK get set up.
I just think it's a little bit interesting. So let's let him go. Go ahead, Nick.
it happens. Stranger things have happened. It wouldn't be the first time that's happened, but it's a little bit weird. Because George Farmer comes from money. His father's a British lord and very wealthy in the commodities trade. And they're both very influential in the conservative movement. They're bridging this transatlantic divide. So it's weird that those two powerful political people form up in a political marriage. But here's what gets weirder. You might say that they meet and maybe they have sex and they fall in love, and in 2 weeks he pops a question, he does it spontaneously. Again, that sort of thing happens. But I've read elsewhere that up until the point that they got engaged, they never did anything sexual or romantic at all. That they met and for 17 days carried on a completely professional correspondence, and then he asked her to marry him. Now that makes no sense at all, if that's true. And I don't know what version of events to believe, if it's the whirlwind romance, if there wasn't anything romantic at all. But I've heard the story told that this rich heir to a commodities fortune, son of a British lord, marries Candace Owens, some black Brexit Turning Point influencers that comes from nothing special. They meet at a political event. They have no sexual romantic relationship. 2 weeks later, he pops a question and proposes. Yeah, something's not right there. That doesn't make any sense at all. That's an arranged marriage. And that's obvious. And she doesn't want to talk about it. She doesn't talk about it. He doesn't talk about it. They don't talk about that because they know how weird it is. And it's no different than Charlie and Erica Kirk. They were set up in exactly the same way. She was set up to interview for Turning Point. I don't believe that. She was dating other people in the conservative movement. She wanted to marry into political royalty. That's why she's in reality shows and music videos. So they set her up with Charlie Kirk. She's an actress. And the same thing is going on with Candace Owens and George Farmer. Very weird. And that tells you that something's up with her. She's in an arranged marriage. She was sponsored for years by Jewish billionaires through Daily Wire and Turning Point. Now that she went full red pill, she remains on YouTube. She's monetized on Twitter. She seems to be completely untouched by any of the censorship, cancellation, any of it. I've never trusted her. Something is not right with that girl. I don't know who she is. I don't know where she came from, but I do not trust her for 1 second. She wants to come and present herself like, I worked for the Jews for 10 years, but now I'm based. I'm not buying that.
Like, this is a different woman to any woman.
How did you meet her?
So she was giving a speech in London. And she was giving a speech at the Royal Automobile Club, which is a club in Pall Mall in London. And I was in the audience. We met, we shook hands, and I just knew kind of, when I met her, I was like, this is a woman who, she just commanded a power. It was very difficult to describe. Nothing romantic was said. You know, between that day and the day that we got engaged, nothing romantic was said at all. You know, there was no overtures. Like, we didn't go for dinner. Like, we didn't take it. Nothing.
Send her flowers.
No, nothing. Yeah, nothing. Exactly. And so I was very clear about that, because it was almost like getting to know oneself in some ways. It was kind of a very strange experience. You know, it was like, I saw myself in her. And in doing so, and that sounds sort of, well, I fell in love with myself. No, I didn't fall in love with her. I fell in love with a woman who gave so much of myself back to me, you know, and I kind of, I was very willing to let myself fade and give glory to her. You know, that's how I view our marriage in many ways. Like, I'm very happy to take a secondary position to give glory to her. You know, I'm far less politically involved now than I was, because she's much more politically involved than I ever could be. When I met her, she was this tour de force, you know, incredible mind, incredible beauty. I was so willing to just be enraptured to her.
Woo. All right. So that's a very interesting story pertaining to their whirlwind marriage or whirlwind romance, whatever you want to call it. Shout out to Nick Fuentes, man. He gonna throw that shade. He's gonna throw that shade for sure. So I just think it's interesting. Like, why does she not talk about the interestingness of her own marriage? But she talks so much about Erica and Charlie's marriage, but not her own, which seems to have a layer of make you say, to it as well. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Please make sure that you follow the Candyland files if you want to keep up with that. And every time something new drops, I'll find something new. I put it in there. And I appreciate y'all rocking with us. Until next time, everybody, grace and peace. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Jay Whip Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please do me a favor and hit me up with that 3-piece special. Like the video, subscribe, and of course, share it with somebody who would also enjoy this type of content. And make sure you leave a comment, because I do pin the best comments to the top. So thank you so much for tuning in today. And until next time, everybody, grace and peace.